Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. I'm incredibly excited for today's video because we've discussed that Bitcoin's mania phases in previous cycles have always required a prolonged downtrend in the US dollar index. And that's also when we've seen our crazy alt seasons as well. And for the first time in months, we're seeing early signs of weakness from the US dollar index thanks to a cooler than expected inflation print, causing the market to price in some additional rate cuts between now and the end of 2024. And of course, this agrees very nicely with our normal cycle scenario. We have no idea how deep this correction is going to go or how long it's going to take. We knew that the summer is quite choppy for Bitcoin, and we've seen quite a bit of chop each and every summer outside of those mania years of 2021 and 2017. So we knew we would likely go sideways for a while and perhaps start our next move higher in late Q3, early Q4, which also happens to be when the Fed is going to start easing aggressively again. And perhaps that could put quite a bit of downward pressure on the US dollar index. And maybe that's what we need for our next major move higher for Bitcoin, as long as we see that fall in the US dollar index. This is also why I have kept my portfolio very conservative. The best times to buy altcoins historically have been these mania phases when you see the US dollar index going down aggressively. So I just prefer to wait for that risk on scenario to take place and then go further out on the risk curve. And we haven't quite seen that yet, but maybe we're going to see that sometime over the next few months. And my risk on signal will be Bitcoin reclaiming that crucial 61.5K breakdown level that we fell below last week and have not been able to reclaim, even with all of the excitement I've seen on YouTube and Twitter of the German government finishing with their Bitcoin sales. We have to go higher now. The only reason we went below 60K was the German government selling, but in reality, price hasn't really done much since we heard that they finished their sales. And of course, we could say that's because the market is still very worried about Mt. Gox repayments, or maybe it's because the Bitcoin miners are still selling, as shown by the capitulation still going on here using this hash ribbons indicator. So just because the German government stopped selling doesn't mean we're completely out of the woods. And that's why these narratives can be very hard to follow, because you can always come up with 10 bullish narratives and 10 bearish ones. For example, the bullish ones would be ETF inflows. We had an incredible week of inflows last week. It almost absorbed a large majority of the German government sales. And of course, we've also seen a lot of fear. Usually this is a good sign at local bottoms. And of course, we also had that nice inflation print. So there's plenty of bullish narratives. There's plenty of concerning bearish ones. So I prefer to simplify it and just go based on the chart, because the chart is just factual and very straightforward. As long as we're below 61.5K on a weekly closing basis, this is a confirmed breakdown for Bitcoin. And usually these red breakdowns you see here are not fake outs and usually tend to lead to more downside. And I went ahead and color coded this chart because I got a lot of questions in my last video, and I also went ahead and labeled them. So in yellow, we have false breakouts, which means Bitcoin was in a range, broke out to the upside on a weekly closing basis, then closed back into the range. Those two have been very good warning signs that we were going to go quite a bit lower. And then of course, green is just a simple breakout to the upside of a trading range like we saw in the beginning of 2023. We saw it again in March 2023, and then the big one was October 23, and of course, February of 2024. So as of right now, this is a breakdown until proven otherwise. So it's great that the German government has run out of Bitcoin to sell, but until I see that bullish reclaim, I'm not gonna get that excited, because we could still have a lot of chop ahead of us, as we've seen from Bitcoin historically during these summers. But of course, in the longer term, going into late Q3, early Q4, great to see ETF inflows, great to see a full sentiment reset, and great to see macro starting to take a turn for the better. But often these things don't move as fast as we want them to. We still have CPI in this sideways range and hasn't broken down with a two handle in front quite yet. We are seeing quite a nice drop each and every month from core CPI, which continues to go in the right direction. And maybe the Fed will just end up cutting rates because of what we're seeing in the unemployment rate and the weakening in the labor market. But for now, the market is expecting a rate cut in September, another one in November, and then another one in December. So we'll see if the Fed actually matches those expectations or if the market will be disappointed. But consensus as of right now is a pause in July, so we likely don't see a lot of excitement and continue to see chop this summer. Now, of course, the S&P 500 still grinding higher week after week. No huge signs of concern quite yet, and still diverging quite a bit away from Bitcoin. So next week should be incredibly interesting, so we can see if Bitcoin decides to actually reclaim that pivotal level and play some catch up, or if we're going to continue to see this divergence play out. As for Ethereum, getting closer and closer to that mid to late July ETF launch, still really not doing much. I mean, reclaiming the mid-level of this range at 3360 would be the first good sign. It would also be a reclaim of the 20-week moving average as well. But just like Bitcoin, it really didn't do much this week, even with all of the excitement of that cooler inflation print and the dollar index going down. We really haven't seen much from Ethereum, and it's still kind of at the same price it was at 2 days ago. As for Solana, still going sideways, still consolidating, still looks like it wants to break down before going higher, but we don't jump to any conclusions until we actually see that weekly close. And I'm still feeling pretty happy with the profits that I took earlier this week. Next week, we'll reassess to see if I want to sell another 5%, but for now, pretty happy with this 26% cash position that I have ready to take advantage of any opportunities this summer. And if Bitcoin is able to make that reclaim of 61.5, I'm happy to put it back into the market a little bit higher, because that'll be a very strong confirmation that we're likely going to go up in the short term. But for now, we're still in the fair value range, so I'm not that excited to put more money into the market, and I would rather sit on my existing positions and be patient, because we still don't know how deep this correction is going to go. It's great the German government selling is behind us, but we still have no idea how many of the Mt. Gox repayments are going to get sold, and we also have no idea how long this minor capitulation is going to carry on for. I would love to have another opportunity to buy Bitcoin in the mid 40,000s, but I don't know if we're going to get it. But I feel great having cash, knowing that if we do go there, I'll be able to take advantage of that opportunity and manage my risk at the same time. But of course, my long-term view still remains unchanged. I believe this is a mid-cycle reaccumulation phase, like the ones that we've seen in each and every cycle leading up to this one. We got ahead of ourselves with this huge rally that got ignited by the ETF filing from BlackRock and the inflows that we ended up seeing, which got everybody very excited. And now we're digesting some of that price action, building some support and consolidating during the summer, which we usually do. And then perhaps we can have our next move higher later in the year, because I remain bullish on risk assets like Bitcoin and the S&P 500, as long as currency devaluation and money supply expansion continue. And that's why we also expect the dollar index to roll over eventually as well. But anyway, let me know what you expect. When will the mania phase be? Is it going to start in Q4? Is it not going to start until 2025? Is the cycle over and we're never going to have a mania phase again, like some of the macro doomers would like to tell you? For me, I really have my eyes set on Q4, perhaps once the summer chop is behind us and once all of the election uncertainty is behind us and the Fed is back to full swing easing. But of course, we have to monitor these things day by day and wait for Bitcoin to actually show us those signs of strength so we can get excited and perhaps add on a little more risk exposure. But for now, all we can do is wait and see what happens and try to monitor it as we go. As always, thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.